The Talking Cheeseheads on cheeseheadtalk.com.
So Outside the Lines comes out with a report about 6 or 6:30 yesterday evening, just before the Brewers were taking on the A's at Miller Park. And they say that Tony Bosch, who you're familiar with if you've been following the story or even not, pretty much classic picture of sleaze. Pedro Gomez of ESPN was talking to him late April, and very fidgety, denying everything, saying they're out to get me, all that sort of stuff, when he's clearly, I shouldn't say clearly, you can bet, he's pretty dirty. He hasn't been proven to be that way in a court of law, and apparently now he'll never have to, because Major League Baseball is stepping in, as treating him as a star witness and getting him to flip on all these players, including Ryan Braun, and say that he handed them PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs, and therefore Major League Baseball will seek to suspend Ryan Braun and Alex Rodriguez, among others. Some notable names, but maybe 20 to 24, 25 total players for at least 50. And in Braun's case, they're going to seek a 100-game suspension, which I'll get to in a minute. I find that completely ridiculous, but I'll get that in a minute. So there are a lot of things to consider here that we'll be talking about for a long time. One would be, will this work for baseball? Is it enough? Do they have enough with Bosch's testimony? They're going to chase down some other people as well. They've already paid off people to squeal. Will that work? Will it hold up? Okay. 100 games. You talked about that. Are you really going to be able to get Ryan Braun for 100 games? Another question I have in this is, why is Big League Baseball so hell-bent? We don't see that from other leagues. Other leagues know it's an issue, but Major League Baseball literally wants to go out of their way to trash these guys, and I think in the end hurt their own product a lot by doing this. It's interesting to me. When will this occur? That's a huge question for Brewer Nation. Huge. Because, if you looked at last night at Twitter like I did when this news broke, a lot of people, and I had thought this right away too, well, boy, if you're going to do this, get this out of the way because the Brewers stink. So let's just get it out of the way this year. I don't know. Ryan Braun's clearly going to appeal this, which leads into my last question, which would be his legacy. He's going to appeal this and, fight like hell. He and his lawyers got out of the positive test the first time. He made an impassioned statement. He's on record as just vehemently denying this. We know how well that goes, right? And now, he came out when the Biogenesis thing broke in the offseason and said, no, it was consulting. Oh, my God. Really? So anyway, how does that affect? And if it bleeds for 2 or 3 months, then we're talking about next year. I mean, I'm looking at this purely as a fan. No, get it out of the way. That's what I'm saying. So let's just touch on these things from the start, and this is going to drag on, so we'll have a lot to say about this over the entire summer. But will this work for baseball? So they're getting Tony Bosch to really coerce testimony to flip because he's broke, he's scared, he has no money. I mean, this is a classic, like a movie script here in real life, right? And he's going to flip, and he negotiated this by reports saying, outside the line saying he negotiated this with Big League Baseball to say, okay, I'm going to have to get protection. I'm going to have to get protection not only from you guys, but from the feds. And baseball's going to do that for him. So, really? So, would this hold up in a court of law is my question, where, you have these documents with these names and players' names and coded names on there, and he's going to tell you what that means. But is he a reliable source? I mean, given the fact that I don't think the guy's, I don't know if I'd want him teaching Sunday school to my kids. Let's put it that way. Okay. So is that going to hold up? Well, it's not a court of law. It's a baseball arbitration deal. Now the players are all lawyered up, and they're gonna attack this thing with all their fury. So it's not 100%. Baseball also probably needs some more. They need other people to corroborate this and go, pay them off or do whatever they do. To make deals and have Bosch's associates corroborate this too. My guess is that it'll hold up enough, and baseball thinks they have enough to execute suspensions. The biggest issue I have with this is the second point I made, the 100 games. This is just absolutely silly on baseball's part and stupid, okay? You're claiming that because the players Braun included denied involvement with Biogenesis, that's one failed test. That's stupid. That is really, really dumb. And I'm offended as a fan. I think it's silly. Lying about taking steroids is expected, okay? I hate to break this to you, but it's just expected. It's like, having sex with an intern. Nobody admits to that. Remember? Did you have sex with an intern? No. Or it's like a woman when she asks you if she looks fat in this dress. Does this dress make me look fat? No. Did you take PEDs? No. It's not a failed test. All of this stuff relates to one incident, one failed test in Ryan Braun's case. The pieces coming together that he took, he got the PEDs from Biogenesis in the clinic and Tony Bosch. The failed test, he denies it. It's all one case, and it should count as one failed test. And to suggest that it should count as two is stupid. And it makes baseball, in my opinion, petty, witch huntful, if that's a word. That's what it makes it look like. It's stupid. I can't see that holding up. Maybe it will, because I don't know. It's not a court of law, right? Like I said before. But I can't see that holding up. I'm offended as a fan by that. I think it's a joke. The third question I have is, why is Major League Baseball so hell-bent? Do you see the NFL this hell-bent on trying to nail its superstars? Do you believe that superstars in the NFL are using PEDs? I do. I think most people who have thought about it logically think that yes. I'm sure that superstars in all sports are using PEDs. I mean, should I name names? I don't know. There are certain tennis players that look a little too muscular for their own good, right? Football players are huge and super fast. Do you think that's just because they eat well? I mean, come on. To suggest that they shouldn't try to enforce and get this stuff out of the game, I'm not saying that. But why do you want to kill your sport? I mean, what's that about? I mean, I get that maybe you're righteous and you preserving records, but look, the records are already shattered. It's already been done. With the anabolic steroid era with Sosa and McGuire. So now, you should be working with players, with the players union, to help as much as you can eliminate this stuff. These are billion-dollar industries. To expect that there's not going to always be people trying to cheat the system is ridiculous. It is a way. This is the monster that you and we and all of us have set up by paying all of this money to watch your sports. We love it. And we love it with the PEDs, by the way. That's the other thing. You're trying to destroy, all of these players and bring them down in suspensions. And it's not hurting the sport or the popularity. In fact, it's increasing the popularity of the sport. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, hey, let's just go for a free-for-all. I don't buy that either. I think you should always be testing, but there's always going to be somebody ahead of the curve. We're talking about HGH right now. There's probably 2 or 3 steps beyond HGH that we don't know about, but certain players do, and certain scientists do, because there's too much money at stake. It's like trying to suggest that there's never going to be fraud in college football because it's idealistic, when there's billions of dollars on the line. Give me a break, okay? So I don't understand why baseball's taking this approach. Other leagues are not. They're not ignoring it, but they're not taking this approach. I don't think this approach is effective. You have to work with the players union here. This is just going to alienate them. It's silly. And you're hurting the image of the sport too. All right, the timing of it. This is a huge question for Brewer fans. For me. Okay? He's going to appeal. There's no way that Ryan Braun doesn't appeal after all that he's said and done about this. He's not just going to say, oh yeah, okay, I'll take my suspension. So that appeals process is going to take probably till September. Brewers are not going anywhere this year, clearly. They're not going to the postseason. So what's likely going to happen is he's going to miss 50 to 100 games next year. Ugh. That's not what we want. At the beginning of the season, we were worried that Braun would miss 50 games. Now, it's like, start today. Let's get it done with. Because the team's terrible. And you're trying to build for the future. The Brewers themselves are never going to talk about this anyway, but they're caught between a rock and a hard place for sure. As is Braun. He can't help but appeal it. But, what's that going to do? It's going to delay it. I mean, ultimately, I think the guy's going to sit. And my bet would be 50 games. Maybe they'll come up with some odd number because of the big league baseball's going for 100. He's saying no, none, obviously. And if they nail him with 1, they'll negotiate it down. But I would bet it's around 50 games. But that, if you're trying to contend next year, it calls into question about the window and clearly the whole thing among the Brewers trying to win is going to be their pitching, which is a whole other issue. But if they can get any semblance of a pitching staff together for next year, well, Ryan Braun's suspension at that time really going to hurt him. So that's a huge question in this, and one that we're going to have to, be paying attention to, as far as just being very, very significant for Brewer fans. And then Braun's legacy. I mean, nowadays if somebody tests positive for PEDs, a lot of people assume that they're trying to come back from injury. Ryan Braun's numbers have never shifted. He's never been, his head isn't growing like Barry Bonds, right? So it's not all this anger suspicion around him, I don't think. I mean, there's a lot of people that boo him on the road, but whatever. I mean, do I feel like he used? Well, I mean, given all that's happened over the last 15 years, and I would love to try and come up with a good defense. Why is he associated with this guy? That's my big, I'd have a reasonable cloud of suspicion, very reasonable, more than reasonable, about the first failed drug test and the chain of command defense that he came up with, or chain of ownership, whatever it was. Chain of custody is what it is, right? And it was tampered. I mean, really? I just don't buy it, okay? But he got off on it, so yay. Yay Brewers, yay Ryan Braun. But then to come out with Tony Bosch and say you paid him $30,000 to consult, you paid this dirty crook essentially, because that's what he is. I don't think there's a ton of doubt about that, right? You paid this sleazy, dirty guy in a strip mall in Miami. He's in a strip mall in Miami. You paid him $30,000 to consult with your high-priced lawyers? I mean, really? Really? I mean, admittedly, I'm not in the steroid world or the PED world, okay? I don't know all the connections of people, but really? And how did he consult you for $30,000? I mean, what? I just don't see it. There's another payment of $1,500. Sources are saying it's for the actual drugs. Okay. So as far as his legacy goes, it hurts it. There's no question about it. Does it take him out of the Hall of Fame and all this stuff? Well, I don't know. We're in a whole era, and the writers of today are not the writers of yesterday. In other words, they've essentially grown up with this as well, or for the most part. And by the time Braun gets to be Hall of Fame eligible at some point, that's assuming he's going to be Hall of Fame eligible career-wise, which he's on track for. He's going to be in with a lot of people who are doing this. What does that mean, legacy-wise, ultimately? In the short term, it's another round of more intense boos on the road this year, and cloud of suspicion covering him. So there's a lot to be determined yet. But the fact that he was associated with this guy really hurts the cause. So those are the 3 or 4 or 5 things that we're really going to have to watch here as time goes along. And really, questions are unanswered. I know in a format like this, I want to come out and have all these answers. But we don't. We just don't know how it's going to play out. There's more that's going to come out. I mean, clearly, more to the story. But it doesn't look good at this point. At least it just flat out does not look good. The fact that baseball is going to pursue a 100-game suspension for Braun, if that is indeed true, means there's a decent chance it'll happen. That's a lot of games, over half the season, obviously, and it probably will happen next year, which really hurts the franchise. If it happened this year, it wouldn't hurt as much, honestly. It just wouldn't. So that's what we got to watch and see how it all unfolds, and we'll be talking a lot about this through the summer, because we're probably not going to be talking about how good the Brewers are, right? So that is essentially where we're at this morning, and obviously it's going to be a long time coming as the story goes through the summer here. We'll talk about it, obviously, on cheeseheadtalk.com. You look at the entire podcast here. You can find us on iTunes. We'll talk with Adam Rigg of the Brewer Nation. We'll talk with Reed Roberts as well about this. So that's all coming up on the podcast. If you go to iTunes and type in the Talking Cheeseheads, you can hear the entire podcast on the entire show today and each and every day here on cheeseheadtalk.com. I'm Ben Larson. We're the Talking Cheeseheads on cheeseheadtalk.com.
The Talking Cheeseheads on cheeseheadtalk.com.